A clear Monday morning arrived when Jasmine Porter, age 14, entered. The esteemed Oxford bank wore her wearing a basic blazer skirt and school uniform loafers. Jasmine was anxious, and she would be proud to make her first processing the $5,000 as a single bank deposit. She received a scholarship check from her exceptional academic achievement. The money was evidence of her diligence, yet it also represented her self-reliance. She was resolved to deal with this transaction independently. Without her, with her parents' assistance, Jasmine went with the check in her hand. Her heart was pounding. When she gripped her paper folder, Victoria, the manager behind the teller, Hayes, a late 40 lady with flawless style and a sense of superiority, became aware of Jasmine's appearance. Her eyes sharpened instantly as Victoria received the check from Jasmine. For a brief moment, the professional grin slipped. Victor's voice at the moment of a $5,000 check rose, just enough to be close clients to listen to for a pupil your age. Where did Jasmine feel the need to do this? Her cheeks began to heat up, but she swiftly returned to her calm. "It's my academic scholarship," she gently described her. Her hands were a little unsteady as she handed over her school ID's award letter, having all the paperwork in one place. A young guy called Tom took the teller, the check from her face changing from being indifferent to being suspicious. He brought it up to the light out of suspicion, examining it like a detective would. After a few lengthy seconds, he looked for a clue, looked across at Victoria, who had been observing the exchange with increasing skepticism. Victoria approached the desk without looking even at Jasmine. "We've experienced a lot of fictitious checks lately," she whispered, her voice brimming with contempt. "I will have to confirm all of Jasmine's." She became anxious since she had been anticipating a basic deposit, but she was now being as if you were a criminal. She glanced at her suitcase and realized in a panic attack when she realized her phone was still. "I need to sit in her locker at school," Jasmine stated in her voice. "I'll call my mom. She's anticipating me and she's cracking a little. I have no phone here, so I'll be home shortly." Victoria hardly looked at her. She snapped at her. "But that's not our concern." Tone contemptuous and icy. "You'll wait till our verification procedure is complete." Jasmine froze still as the words wounded her. Victoria turned away from the disdain with every turn she made at the bank. The manager moved to a corner and put her arms in. Her expression was crossed, in front of her, gloating as she saw Jasmine positioned in the center of the crowded lobby. Her heart was racing in her chest as she unable to move and left standing in the corner. Navigate her through the commotion of the bank went on, but she had the impression that everyone in the room was observing her. Rumors started to spread among some customers are staring at her, openly curious, whereas others who seldom, she stood there for her hidden judgment. What seemed like forever, as the shame caused the minutes to pass, deepened each moment as if it were in the marble floor underneath her for all eternity, feet becoming chilly every time minute, regardless of the circumstances. Jasmine's, she had always had a bright intellect, perceptive, observing how people engaged with each other and the subtle variations in how some people received respectful treatment, while others were disregarded or dismissed, had before observed it. But today she was, as she lived it, she wanted to yell and demand that they return her paperwork to her. However, she said nothing. Her father had constantly instructed her to maintain her composure throughout the face of hardship, yet she was unable to dispel the perception that she was receiving treatment was unrelated to the validity of her research and things related to her appearance. Jasmine could hear it from the other side of the room. Victoria talking to Tom in a quiet, nearly voice of conspiracy. "I'm telling you, we must uphold our standards here." Victoria stated that we cannot just let everyone to enter and anticipate being treated. As Jasmine's heart fell when she realized they were, the words felt like a smack in her face. People weren't judging her for who she was. Yet the way she regarded her hands balled into fists and she struggled to maintain her calm. She had put in a lot of effort. She had won this scholarship, fair and square, and it seemed that way today, was disappearing. From her, she looked at more time at the wall-mounted clock while the whispers went on. The soul she could now just wait, Jasmine. Porter was not your typical adolescent. Despite being in Oak's most upscale neighborhood, she had always liked the neighborhood. She prefers simplicity over luxury. The family's house was tasteful, yet subtle and unobtrusive shows of riches simply, in well-furnished quarters, and a profound feeling of belonging. Dr. Naomi Porter, Jasmine's mother, was a well-known financial specialist who oversaw the most reputable companies in the nation. As a lady who had constructed her starting her career from scratch, Naomi had gave Jasmine a deep feeling of self-reliance, and the conviction that it was hard work, not luxury, that led to success. The Porters were extremely wealthy, yet Dr. Naomi Porter did not display it, felt that education had great power, and she frequently reminded Jasmine of her hard work, that having money wasn't only about getting wealth, was about using that Jasmine's wealth for good. I learnt these principles thoroughly, doing really well in her coursework and obtaining a complete funding to attend Wester Academy, esteemed institution, renowned for its demanding coursework. This wasn't an accomplishment presented on a silver platter. Jasmine had put in a lot of effort, receiving her scholarship based on merit, rather than the power behind her mother's name. Friends frequently admired her capacity to balancing extracurricular activities, schoolwork, and Jasmine didn't mind working part-time. She enjoyed the task because it was her method of demonstrating to herself and the world in which she might thrive independently. Her mother had consistently encouraged her to course, but she didn't let Jasmine want you to take shortcuts so you can comparable prospects to those of others. According to Naomi, but I also want you to, Jasmine, stand on your own 2 feet, choose to manage her bank account. On hers was an additional step in the direction of, at the age of 14, she felt independent, although as though she was prepared to face the world. The scholarship check as an adult, which was the result of her labors, seemed to represent her becoming maturity earlier in the morning. Going to the bank where Jasmine had put the meticulously examined folder in her. The breakfast table was where Mom had sat. Looking over some of her company's financial reports, however, she had taken a moment to grin at, "Are you certain you don't want me, Jasmine?" Naomi asked, her voice, "If she may accompany you." "I'm warm, yet I'm a little worried." "Mom," Jasmine answered quietly. Confidence. "It's time for me to study. I'm 14 now. To complete this alone." Her mother had. Naomi nodded, her pride shining in her eyes. Had faith in Jasmine's ability to, and yet she was unable to stop worrying about it. Was a mother's natural inclination to protect her kid from danger, particularly when the world may be cruel at times, and cruel. Jasmine had comforted her. "I'll go in and make the deposit. I'll be all right. And return before completing your..." It had appeared to be such a straightforward meeting. Mission. Jasmine never thought would simply entering a bank to make a deposit. A scholarship check would result in this kind of suffering. While she waited in the corner of the, Jasmine was unable to avoid the bank, although consider the teachings her mother taught her. Told her that she had been brought up to believe in equality and justice, for respect others and have high expectations for them, the same back. But as she was standing, she was humiliated and lonely there. Understood that the world didn't, Jasmine, always follow the same guidelines, had been compelled to face the unpleasant truth that her color and looks had a role in how the treatment she received wasn't something she'd comprehended completely prior to today. During her childhood in Oak Ridge, she had never encountered prejudice such as this. She was certain that she had read about it in novels, but it always appeared to it was her today, so it was theoretical. Reality. She took another look at the clock. Her nervousness was growing. She had already been After waiting for much too long, she wondered why. Why hadn't anyone visited to see how she was doing? Did she remain in the corner, when she had only brought in a valid check to deposit over time? The longer she stood, the more she sensed the strain of the circumstance on her shoulders that her mother would anticipate. She had to phone her when she got home. But it was also refused, and time went by slowly. Where Jasmine was standing in the corner, the situation's weight bearing down on the marble flooring seemed chilly to her, underneath her feet and the ongoing. The wall clock's ticking appeared to intensify her increasing feelings of loneliness. People arrived and left, but nobody talked to, for her. She was only in an unseen entity that is the source of silence, in the center of the bustling bank. Judgment, Jasmine's thoughts as she stood there started. Taraki. She looked around at the other patrons. Some of those were receiving care that blatant partiality. A well-dressed and elderly couple entered and were welcomed with Victoria Hayes's ECT for warmth and respect, who took them to a VIP personally. Location, Jasmine never received such a recognition. It seemed like she didn't belong in this planet or in this space. Of mahogany wood and polished marble. After a short while, a young man with a heavy accent approached the counter. Victoria, holding the documents, had been observing him from the other side of the room, waved him off right away with a contemptuous gesture. I apologize for the systems operating slowly today. It will take some time to handle your request, she added in a voice. Jasmine, oozing with apathy, watched as the man made her stomach drop, walked off, obviously irritated, but when a Caucasian couple came in a few seconds later. With comparable documentation, Victoria's attitude totally changed. She nearly smiled as she led the way. Let me go to the counter, of course. Take care of that for you immediately, she added. Her voice is eager and sweet, and you're in Jasmine's chest is in wonderful hands, clenched with a combination of rage and amazement that this wasn't merely an error. This wasn't simply bad customer service. Was there something more sinister? Firmly entrenched in prejudice, she was aware of Victoria was plucking at what was going on, and choose whom to show respect to, because it was evident to her that Jasmine didn't belong. And she tightened her hands, sides as she made herself stay still, keeping her feelings to herself. She has already witnessed similar behavior, covert, pernicious prejudice, masquerading as customer support, but never had she experienced it so intimately, so sadly. It seemed like the whole bank had abandoned her for no other reason than due to the hue of her skin. Victoria's voice pierced the atmosphere, addressing the security once more. A guard stands close to Jasmine, keeping watch on her, telling her to be calm and make sure she doesn't attempt authoritative. Jasmine's heart was racing when she left. Must fight the want to yell at thee. Instead, she concentrated on the unfairness of it all. On her breathing while attempting to remain composed, attempting to ignore the pain that she had been in danger of being overpowered, trained to deal with challenging circumstances with grace. But today, it seemed like today, however, she was confined to a system that failed to recognize her as a human. However, as a hassle, minutes, hours passed, and the only sound was the rustling of paper every now and again, a faraway whisper of courteous talk, and Victoria's piercing click, Jasmine's heels on the marble floor. Couldn't get away from the feeling that she was being seen by all those in the bank, was watching her and evaluating her, though the frequency and volume of murmurs increased. Jasmine heard snippets of this insulting comment said in conversation, whispers of sympathy, and a few barely disguised giggles. She felt insignificant and helpless. The toughest thing was that she wasn't certain whether anyone didn't care that nobody had defended her. Someone had intervened to inquire as to why she was treated in this manner. It was a 7 if her pain was not obvious to. They are only a component of the background noise of a society that has come to disregard. Then, just as Jasmine's thoughts was Starting to come loose from the gravity of the circumstance something captured. Victoria was talking to Tom in her eye, teller with a tight face and quiet voice, with frustration. Why is she still present? Victoria's voice was just above a murmur that we must get rid of her. She is aware that she is not welcome. When Jasmine heard it, her stomach fell. Victoria's remarks sufficiently validated what she had always suspected, that this wasn't just regarding a missing check or a chilled error. It was about a lot of darker. It dealt with power dynamics and the belief that those who liked Jasmine wasn't supposed to be in places like these, was an annoyance to an outsider. Issue must be resolved as Jasmine couldn't stop turning away, herself from voicing her opinion. "I'm not an issue," she murmured in a trembling voice. "But stable, I've earned the right to be here. I'm here to deposit my check for the scholarship." Victoria, like everyone else, didn't even give her a quick glance, but instead her voice turned to the security man. "Take her to the back in a low, dominating manner. Hold her there until we've completed the security guard is a big man with paperwork." With a menacing demeanor came Jasmine's hand without hesitation, tightened his hold on her arm, and started dragging her through the bank floor. Each time, the room's eye turned to observe, but no one. Jasmine felt the blood flow as someone stepped in to her face while being led by force. Her heart was away from the teller counter, accelerating with a mixture of rage and the guard gave the order to stand here in disgrace, putting her in a corner close to their of the space where she might be. Santo everyone, but he moved out of the path, took a step back, looking around the room, ensuring Jasmine remained where she was, stood with her arms folded over her head, her back and her chest held high. But she was collapsing on the inside. Separated, with Jasmine standing in the corner. Hours of effort caused the body to ache. Her thoughts spiraled out of control. The situation's grim truth burdened her, as she had been humiliated and seen as an outsider and aware she anticipated receiving treatment equitably. Each minute that went by seemed to continue indefinitely, and the longer she waited, the more she understood that there was a serious problem. The man's gaze swept across the bank, looking for anything that might provide a diversion from the tremendous feeling of unfairness in her eyes fell on Victoria Hayes, the manager, who'd been moving about the space, her heels making a harsh clicking sound against it was talking to her about marble floors. Tall, powerful, well-dressed man who at first Jasmine didn't recognize. Then she was struck by something in his manner. As well-known, he was a significant figure, and based on Victoria's speech pattern, she was eager to get to know him. "Please click the man's name." Harrison. Jasmine's thinking is like a bell. She had suggested the name Wells.Mother before casually speaking. Harrison. Wells on Business Rivals served as Meridian Banking Group's CEO. Among the biggest rivals to her mother had recently purchased a bank. As Jasmine watched, her heartbeat accelerated. Wells and Victoria's conversation. She was too far away to hear their clear communication, but she could tell Victoria was leaning towards something serious. She lowered her voice towards Wells too. She handed him a manila, in a near whisper. Folder. Jasmine felt her pulse pounding as she noticed the exchange. The folder was. The term is prominently displayed. Private. Even if she was unable to discern the contents, it was clear that everything within was significant. Jasmine's head was spinning from what she had witnessed. Her mother spent years constructing the bank's credibility and trust, and she understood that any violation of confidentiality potentially disastrous. This was not your typical business meeting, a potential betrayal of greater magnitude. She moved a bit in her corner, searching for further information, but her position was not perfect, but she retained her. Wells' eyes were fixed on the two figures. Nodded, while perusing the folder. His solemn face even made him happy. shared his thoughts with Victoria as well. Too faint to see, but the smile that extended her face and spoke to Jasmine all the information she required about Victoria wasn't only assisting Wells, but aggressively opposing her own business. The stomach of her own boss, Jasmine, churned. It was getting more obvious. By the second, Victoria wasn't only abusing her because of her age or race, she was making use of her job at the bank. Jasmine didn't know what was being sabotaged. She was aware that it wasn't in that folder. Nice. And she was aware that it had a connection. When she was with her mother, she felt an abrupt influx of resolve, not only a passive observer anymore. Jasmine realized she needed to take action. She wasn't only coming to make a check deposit. Moreover, she had discovered something considerably larger, anything that may have an impact. The life and career of her mother couldn't just see her eyes without doing something. Scroll down to the notepad that is bound in leather. She never left home without. Her made notes throughout her tenure at the bank recording the discrimination, care she had seen. But this was crucial, and it was unusual. Needed to record all she had observed. Jasmine's every detail and whisper, uncertain of what she might do with the details, but she was aware that she had to maintain a document she needed to have ready. As Wells and Victoria remained silent, Jasmine swiftly opened her mouth to speak. Notepad. Her trembling fingers wrote, taking note of the time, names, and everything she had in the dubious folder, noted throughout such few seconds. The two's chat came to an end. Suddenly, as I was about to depart, Victoria smiled as she shook his hand. Manner that was almost too eager for Jasmine's. As Wells passed by her heart raced. His footsteps were heavy as he headed towards the exit. Purpose after he left, Victoria went back to her typical place behind the counter, but she had lost her grin. Was giving her whole attention at this moment. About Jasmine, who stood in the Jasmine felt a chill go down her spine. It was as though Victoria knew she'd seen it all. Jasmine's mind was racing after seeing sufficient to understand that something evil was taking place in the background, but what? How could she use this information? Could she provide evidence of what had transpired? Her fingers clenched around the pen. With her hand determination in place, she had been mistreated, but she now had the opportunity to put things right. Not for herself, but for her mother, family, as well as for all those who have been handled unfairly by Victoria Hayes. Jasmine refused to let this pass. Stood quietly while the burden of the circumstances weighed heavily on her. Hours of humiliating waiting had accumulated. She had already been wronged up to this point. Given the impression that she didn't belong yet, she possessed a far more precious item now. Compared to her check or the documentation she possessed, it was time to make that decision. Reality as though she had called. It as the bank doors opened, I thought. Naomi Porter Jack, her mother, walked a beat skipped in Jasmine's and Naomi's hearts. She was serene and had a captivating demeanor, calm and well-attired, a stark in contrast to the mayhem that had broken out Victoria Hayes in the bank, who had been standing up to supervise Jasmine's experience. As soon as she saw Naomi miss, she became straight. In her voice, Porter Victoria greeted her. I wasn't oozing with feigned politeness. I'm expecting you today. How may I help? However, Naomi didn't reply with greetings. She went straight to Jasmine, narrowed her gaze as she took, seeing her daughter standing lonely, yet alone, in the corner of Naomi's face, flashed with rage, before she covered it up with a serene, "Are you okay, Jasmine?" she asked outside. Jasmine's voice was filled with worry, nodded, struggling to control her feelings. "Check, Mum. I'm fine," she remarked in a voice stable in spite of the whirlwind of ideas within her. But something you must be aware that Jasmine dragged her out, leather-bound notepad, and started describing all she had seen. While she was working at the bank, The white people receive preferential treatment, clients the icy disregard displayed to hear, and above all, that dialogue between Victoria and she read aloud from Harrison Wells. Observes her voice being steady as she described the dubious encounter and the folder with the label. Naomi listened carefully to her in confidence, each phrase hardening the face when Jasmine was done, Naomi looked at Victoria's intense look at Miss Hayes. Naomi replied in a cold tone, "I think you owe my. I believe you should apologize to your daughter, me Andreasen, for Victoria's self-assured exterior. I don't know what you're doing." I started to crack. She stumbled during speaking, but Naomi cut her off. "I am well aware of what you've been doing," Naomi answered in a voice. "You've been forceful, but in control. Arranging to hand over Harrison Wells's, giving private information to a rival. This isn't only an instance of, this is corporate's bad customer service. Espionage." No one spoke at the bank. Jasmine was moved as she saw Victoria's expression became pallid, her poise eroding. As a result of Naomi's remarks, she parted her lips to protect herself, but was unable to locate the words Naomi didn't. "Hayes, give her a chance or you'll be fired," she said, effective immediately. Landed with a sense of closure that appeared to security at the bank was echoed throughout. Contacted, and the big guard who had Jasmine was previously led to the corner, proceeded in the direction of Victoria. "Kindly escort Naomi," was told by Miss Hayes out as Victoria was completely lured away from her pride. Naomi turned back to the room. "Broken. This establishment will go through a comprehensive review." Naomi's authoritative voice. "We'll make adjustments to make sure that everyone is not given the same treatment. My kid was treated disrespectfully today by nobody." Jasmine's heartbeat could still be heard in the room, firmly in her chest while she observed her. The problem is taken over by her mother. Jasmine's strength was a constant pillar. Admired, the following several months passed quickly, of modifications at the bank, and the inquiry investigation into Victoria's behavior revealed not merely her efforts to undermine Naomi's business, as well as a trend of discriminatory actions taken by the banks. The management was restructured, and a new course on equitable banking procedures were established for Melody. The young teller who had demonstrated Jasmine's generosity during her experience was elevated to a position of management. Jasmine's encounter turned out to be a pivotal point for her as well as the bank. She was also asked to speak at. She told her tale at Wester Academy. With other pupils, Jasmine made advantage of her voice to promote financial knowledge and the significance of equality for everyone places in front of her classmates. Chagrined, aware of her suffering, she was someone formed by experience, who was able to defend those she had transformed her embarrassing situation into an opportunity to promote change, and her mother's. She had learnt from the example that even when injustice was present, it was feasible to change things.